And Njogu is the Principal Secretary, State Department for Diaspora Affairs. We'll talk a bit about that kazi maju by the President. But first of all, PS, karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
Doing good. Thank you so much for inviting me to have a conversation about this really, really important
Absolutely.
topic.
We'll talk about the human trafficking subject in a bit.
Yeah.
But regarding, because I'm sure your State Department is very much involved in the negotiations going around the Kazi Maju program.
Yeah.
How would you rate its success? The President says it is doing fantastic.
It is. It has been a great success. And remember that we began this process by creating the global labor market strategy that basically brings together government's response to this idea of unemployment. And we are looking to other markets abroad where our fantastic talent can find opportunities. And so we came together as a number of state departments, State Department for Diaspora Affairs and the State Department for Labor and Skills Development led this project. But of course you have in there foreign affairs, you've got immigration, you've got TVET, youth and so on. And what we did was really structure how we are going to go about protecting our citizens when they go out there, how we're going to go about facilitating them to take up their rightful place in the global labor market, how we would create policy to structure this, as well as regulation for the protection. It's been hugely successful. In the last 2 years alone, over 100 and about 180 now. No, it's about 180,000 people in the last 1 year have found opportunities and left for these jobs abroad. So our diaspora is growing, and people are finding opportunities. One of the ways you know that the project is working is just looking at the remittance numbers, for example, that were just released by the CBK in the last few days.
FDIs?
Remittances, diaspora remittances. And that number is now up to $4.9 billion in the last year. That is a huge number. And it's a jump from $4.18 US last year. Okay, so something like $0.7 US extra has been sent home by Kenyans living abroad. That is the single largest source of forex. It is higher than what we get from coffee, from tea, from tourism, from horticulture. So quite simply, growing a diaspora means that they can continue to support their families back home. And that is what we see in that story of the diaspora remittance. Yes.
The big question is sometimes, you were still the State Department, you are still at the State Department for Diaspora Affairs, when a press release was issued regarding jobs available in Canada. And sometimes Kenyans, were running around checking, fact-checking the numbers. I think you've seen some doubts amongst Kenyans regarding these opportunities. So the question is, the jobs announced, are they available?
So which jobs are you speaking about?
I'm talking about when Alfred Mutua was actually the Minister for Foreign Affairs. You remember sometime being fact-checked by the Embassy for Canada.
So yes, and let me be clear. Yes, I was the PS for Diaspora Affairs. I have been the only one since the State Department was set up. And then Waziri Mutua, as my boss, was in the process of beginning to negotiate opportunities with Canada. And these negotiations tend to take quite some time, right? So there is some back and forth, there is conversations, there is saying, signaling that we're going to be able to open up our country for your people to come and work and so on and so forth. And while you might say that there is a lot of sometimes mistrust or sometimes, what's the word now, hesitancy by Kenyans to take these things seriously, a big part of that has been because of crooks in the space. You will hear that we will say we have now negotiated and signed an agreement with Germany, for example. Kenyans will take a wait-and-see attitude, which is what we have seen over the years. They will take a wait-and-see attitude. They want to see nikina nani wameenda Ujerumani, and they start, especially Kenyans on social media, just sort of begin to observe. But Kenyans are moving. The people who are looking for the opportunities and who've prepared for these opportunities are moving and are already taking up these jobs and so on. So we see that. The other reason why we see a bit of hesitancy is because the space has also been crowded very often by people masquerading as agents who are not agents, so fraudsters, scam artists, as well as human traffickers, and we're going to speak about that in a little bit. And so what you've seen then is people a little bit concerned, unwilling to jump in, because they're like, how do I know that you're not just going to take my 300,000 shillings and I never hear from you again? But also there's the assumption, and a lot of these things are really going on in our minds. There's the assumption that you need to know somebody to get a job abroad. You need to come with a brown envelope to a certain office somewhere and see somebody, and that is not the case. So you see these things, or I hear this one very often, P.S., can you put me on the list for Germany? There isn't a list. I'm not maintaining a list for people to go to Germany. So we've opened up these markets, and we want people to be able to take up these opportunities, but they have to compete. In the same way, if I am looking to take up a job here at KBC, I can't come and start saying, can you put me on the list? I must apply. I must actually put myself out there. So the concerns that we see from Kenyans, I think, really come from a place of having, over many years, not been supported well to take up these opportunities and to be facilitated to enter this space, but also because of the scam artists and the con artists that have entered the space that have made everybody very afraid.
It's an abundance of caution.
Yes, that is the word. They are exuding or showing an abundance of caution.
All right.
Yes.
Let's talk about human trafficking.
Yes.
But you have issued an alert over Malaysia.
Over Thailand, over
Thailand,
and
yes.
over and over again. Human trafficking is particularly concerning for us now because as we roll out Kazi Maju and as Kenyans, hundreds of thousands of Kenyans are taking up opportunities in good jobs abroad, the scam artists that I spoke about and the rogue agents or fraudsters masquerading as agents are changing tact. So we come and say we have these jobs in Qatar, all right? What immediately emerges is a human trafficking ring under that basically comes and advertises jobs available abroad, no agent required, a lot of it happens.
It is government that has said these opportunities are available.
Yes.
And then a cartel forms around.
Other people will usually come and say that jobs are available. We have jobs in Thailand, we have jobs in Malaysia, we have jobs in all of these places, usually in Southeast Asia. And then what will happen is that people will and they will operate differently. So the people who are advertising jobs in Canada, for example, will usually demand a lot of money from people. And those fraudsters will demand 1 million shillings. I know people who have been conned millions of shillings. I know people who have been conned hundreds of thousands of shillings. They will demand that kind of money. They will take it from you. They will never supply a job. Okay, so we have several cases currently being investigated by the DCI. Unfortunately, we also have people who get conned and never talk about it because they're a bit ashamed about the fact that they lost this money. So, and that just encourages the fraudsters to continue going on. So that's one part of the problem. The one that is more concerning to me, even though this one is very serious, is a human trafficking angle. We come and say, jobs available in Thailand, we are looking for IT professionals, we are looking for translators, you need to have, be able to speak Mandarin, or you need to have an IT degree and that kind of thing. And you actually do an interview. You do an interview, you do a Zoom interview, and they process paperwork. They give you an offer, you sign it, and you go to the Thai embassy and you get a visa, a visitor's visa, a tourist visa, never a work permit. Okay, and then you go and you arrive in Bangkok, and they pick you up from the airport, and they drive you and you cross the border to Myanmar. And once you cross the border to Myanmar, you find out that there isn't a job that you were expecting.
Oh, Lord.
What you are now is a prisoner, a pseudo-slave who must perform online scams. We have had hundreds of Kenyans fall for this. In the last 2 years alone, we have rescued about 150 Kenyans from these scam compounds.
150?
In Myanmar, yes. 150 Kenyans. We've rescued them where you are. So the scam goes this way. You are now required, you applied for an IT job, great. You need to set up several online Facebook accounts and other social media accounts. You need to pose as a beautiful girl, and they will supply you with photographs of usually white women. And then you need to reach out to various men around the world. and ask them for money and get them to send you money. If you're not productive, they starve you, they beat you up, they electrocute you. It is horrible. You cannot leave.
These people have networks in Kenya, so much so that...
They have networks everywhere. So if you hear, and I hope this message gets out as clearly as possible, because we have spoken about it with our ambassador. Kiptines has done everything he possibly can. This is our ambassador in Thailand. We have spoken to everybody, but I still have every day Kenyans leaving to go to Thailand for a job. I want to make the following very clear. There are no jobs in Thailand, okay? And if you're applying for a job and someone is telling you, come for a job in Thailand, it is most likely a scam. It is not in Thailand. You're going to be crossed over to Myanmar, which is a different country, which has had a lot of tumultuous times, as you might know. And the areas where these scam compounds are set up are in places where government doesn't have very good control. So the mafia have built these scam compounds.
I want us to get this out of the way.
Yes.
What is happening in Myanmar is sexual exploitation.
No. So you have sexual exploitation in certain places, including Kenyan, East African women that we are aware of who are trafficked now into Thailand for sexual exploitation and other parts of Southeast Asia. We've seen that in Malaysia. We go and find a beautiful woman in the market, and we tell her, or someone usually in a salon, she's working in the salon or she's working in a boutique, and we'll tell her, would you like to do this job somewhere else? Ungependa kufanya kazi huko diaspora? That is a recruiter. And I use recruiter in quotes because that is not a recruiter, that's an agent for the traffickers. And they organize everything. Please note this girl is not living in Nairobi necessarily, she's probably living very far. She is brought to Nairobi, very quickly gets her passport, her visa, and out of the country. As soon as she gets into these countries, and please note, I'm saying this with a lot of experience. I have met these women in these countries. I have interviewed them. I have had to rescue them.
150 of them so far.
We have rescued 150. I've of course not had to interview all of them, but I've met with a number of these women and spoken with them about their experiences. You would not wish this on your worst enemy. You arrive in this country, you genuinely believe you're going to work in a spa, and what you're immediately told is, okay, so you've arrived, give me your passport so I can change this from a visitor's visa to a work permit, and as soon as you hand it over, the person who has brought you there says, okay, so the job actually here is commercial sex work.
Oh my God. Let's take a small breather. We'll come back, absorb that a bit, and then come back. Don't go too far. We're coming back with PS Rosalind Njogu. Welcome back. We're having a rather quite interesting yet sad conversation regarding what is ongoing in Thailand. Of course, Kenyans living, but then what awaits them is something else. And PS, we were talking about sexual exploitation, which is where I want us to go. But probably before we talk about sexual exploitation, because we've talked about Thailand. Yeah. Is it the only place in Asia that has recorded some of these vices?
Right. So remember again, Thailand is an entry point, right? So people will ideally enter through Thailand. They might stay and be trafficked in Thailand, but they're more likely to be trafficked into Myanmar, into Laos, PDR, into Vietnam, into the neighboring countries. But as I was saying to you, there's about 3 different kinds of problems that we have. You have the sexual trafficking, right? People are being trafficked for sexual services. You have people who are being trafficked for what we're now calling these scam compounds, right? Like you go in there and you have to do commit IT fraud. And then you have the one that we're more aware of, which is women moving to, particularly some countries in the Middle East, as domestic workers, and then they end up not being treated in the way that they're supposed to be treated according to the contract, according to agreements that we might have, according to international law and so on. So the sex trafficking rings will usually lure women with opportunities for jobs, to work in spas, to work in beauty salons, to work in hospitality, and that kind of thing. And once you arrive in this country, then what you're going to be told. And the ones I've spoken to, it's been very heartbreaking. You arrive on that day, they take your passport and they immediately tell you, well, actually, the job that we were promising you, you need to go on the street immediately. And there are women who've had to go onto the street the very day they arrive and sell their body so that they can pay the madam who brought them. And they will do that for months. What saddens me is that a lot of these women are really naive, haven't been exposed, do not know that there is A, an embassy in this country, or B, they do not know that even if someone holds my passport, I can still go home. I don't need that passport to go home. I can go to the embassy and get an emergency travel document and go home.
Back home?
Yes. If you lose your passport tomorrow in pick a country, in Ghana, you go to our embassy in go to our High Commission in Ghana, and we will issue you an emergency travel document. So it's not, you're not bound, but we've managed to convince these women that they are bound. So there is that ring. It is horrible. We've been rescuing women. We've brought in some women, I think as late as yesterday or 2 days ago, from India and so on, who've been trafficked on that path, sexual trafficking. The second one is these scam compounds that I'm telling you. The victims of these scams are not your usual victims. They don't fit the perfect victimology that we usually think about. They're not vulnerable women. These are usually people with a degree in IT. So we're talking about someone with a BSc in IT, a computer science degree, and so on, because that is the criterion for getting the job. Someone who probably has 2 languages, so who speaks Mandarin or French or something like this. Sometimes somebody who has already worked in the diaspora or gone to school in the diaspora. So this person does not usually think of themselves as a victim. Right? Because you're an educated person, so you don't usually think of yourself as a victim. But this person is currently unemployed, so they apply for this opportunity. And everything appears legit up to the point where they cross the border with you, because they come and pick you up from the airport. They cross the border with you through an entry point called Mysot between Myanmar and Thailand. And they cross the border with you, and at that point, you are in the hands of gangsters. I have horrible pictures on my phone that have been sent to me by our ambassador of people who have been burned with electric whips, who've been beaten severely. We have lost one woman because they tried to operate on her and she died. And they will tell you, if you want to leave, if you really don't want to do this scamming business, then pay us. They'll give you an exorbitant amount of money, they will beat you, they will starve you, they will electrocute you, or they will tell you, give us one of your kidneys.
My Lord. Yes.
So they will do organ harvesting. I want to be very, very clear with you. If you hear of a job opportunity abroad, check with us. We will tell you whether that job exists or not.
That's what I want you to explain to us in 1 minute, because we have to end up. What do I need to do if I hear an opportunity?
If you hear an opportunity, please get in touch with the State Department for Diaspora Affairs, and I will give you our details shortly, and you can run them. You can drop us an email at kazimaju at kazimaju@diaspora.go.ke. Okay?
At diaspora.go.ke.
Yeah, kazimaju@diaspora.go.ke. And send us the details of that job. We have contacts with all of our embassies. We'll be able to tell you, does that teaching job in Thailand exist? Amanistoriza Jaba. We're going to be able to tell you whether that opportunity actually exists or not. And I'll share with you the number shortly. What is most unfortunate about this is that there are opportunities out there. And many people are taking up good job opportunities. But you've got to use the right path. The right path is, if you're looking for an opportunity, find a legit licensed recruitment agency. You will find that information on the National Employment Authority website, on the NEA website. Then you know that I'm dealing with a company called XYZ. These are their offices, so that if things go south, we know where to come for them. And we usually will come for people who go rogue. But also check with us. We are at Old Mutual Tower on the ground floor, no, on the first floor.
On the first floor.
That is where the Kazi Majuu offices are. That is where the State Department for Diaspora Affairs, Diaspora Jobs Office is. That's where the Diaspora Placement Agency is. So come there and just ask us, is this job legit? Before you've parted with your money or before you've had to part with your life. Yeah?
The number?
Oh, let me give you the number very, very quickly. I'll give it to you. We have we have several of these, and I'm trying to make sure that the one I'm giving you is the one that goes directly to the people. It's +25420
+25420
787 6000 787 6000
6000
or 011 475 7002. 011 475 7002.
And I think we'll run this on the scrolls.
Kindly, if you would do that. This will save lives. Okay. Let me say this final thing.
Yes.
That human trafficking is a problem of the whole world, and we all have to do our part. And for anybody who wants to migrate abroad to take up these opportunities in the hundreds of thousands that I spoke about, please do it safely. Use a licensed recruitment agent. Come to the Diaspora Placement Agency at the State Department for Diaspora Affairs. We will tell you what opportunities are available. And if you're in doubt, call us. We will tell you. We have had an opportunity to stop people at the airport when they are leaving to go into very dark places. So come to us. We will give you the right information.
Wow, Rosalind, I mean, this was educative.
I hope so. I really hope so.
Really educative. And we thank you very much for sparing your time.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really important.
Absolutely. And we thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
PS Rosalind Njogu, in charge of the State Department for Diaspora Affairs. Take home. There are no jobs in Thailand.